Calgary is in a wait and see. The Tabbies walk it off to keep their playoff hopes alive. Well, if you're new to this show, this is Placed on the 55. What we do here is we focus on sports betting in the CFL. Our format is a little of a look back on the week before and our picks, and then we jump forward and look at the week ahead, and we tell you who our picks are with the spread. So last week, Jess, Friday, we had an opening game between Hamilton and Toronto, and I love storylines. I don't watch a lot of dramas on TV. I really watch sports, and I love sports when storylines materialize. And the Tabby Cats had a walk-off field goal last week against Toronto, one of their main rivals, to keep their playoff hopes alive and stay within 4 points of a playoff berth on the eastern side of the CFL. Man, I am stoked on the Tabbies. I think they're actually going to get to the Grey Cup, and if they do, with potentially the MOP, Bo Levi, I'm excited. I'm excited to see them turn this into a story for the season.
Are you sure you didn't get high before this show? That first game last week, I had picked Toronto to cover that 6.5 point spread. The Tabbies outright won the game. Toronto's really pissing me off.
Yeah, you're right. Toronto is pissing you off. You don't know if they're hot or cold or hit or miss. They just they show up and you don't know who's showing up. If you look at the Tabbies and the way that they're going to finish up this next 5 weeks of the regular season, every team right now has got 4 games remaining. If they can finish 3-1 and Toronto goes 1-3, the Tabbies are in.
Yeah, and boot out the Torontos. Yeah.
That's right. And we don't have to worry about some weird crossover to the West. We just need the Tabbies to go 3-1. And I think it's pretty likely, looking at the schedule for Toronto, that they're going to go 1-3 anyway in the next 4 games left in their season.
Do you have those 4 game schedules in front of you?
I got the Hamilton here. I got them going up against BC, then Winnipeg, Calgary, and Ottawa. There's a bye in there also.
Okay, that sounds like 1-3 to me.
1-3. Oh, yeah.
BC, Winnipeg, and Ottawa are going to beat them.
Going to beat the Tabbies.
Yeah. That's we're getting ahead of ourselves.
That's where we are in the season, though. I don't think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this season. These next 4 weeks are going to be make and break for a lot of teams.
They're going to be huge.
And this week, we got Calgary sitting on the sidelines, and they're just kind of waiting to see if they're going to be 4 points back of the Rough Riders or 6 going into week 18.
Yeah, I was going to touch on Calgary about this their bye week, and I hope Dave Dickinson kept that team in Calgary, and I hope he practiced them every day. I hope, and I think he would have said, "Okay, boys, we got a lot of work to do. No one's going home for the week."
Do you think they really have a chance though? They're so low in the West, and they're 4 points out of a playoff spot right now with Edmonton in between them.
Well, Dickinson's not going to give up. Most of those players aren't going to give up, and that's why I hope they stayed in Calgary and showed up for checked in every day. So they stay focused and actually come back and perform well next week.
My hope is that Hamilton goes 3-1 in the next 4. You would ask me about Toronto. Are they likely to go 1-3? Well, let's see. They face Montreal. Then they get their bye. Then they're coming against Winnipeg. The next game is Ottawa. Really important game there.
No kidding.
Yeah, the final game's against Edmonton. So you could say Edmonton's probably a sure thing, but Edmonton might be scrappy in week 21, and that could be 0-4 for them. Who knows?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the second to last week against Ottawa, that should make or break them, because that will probably almost determine a tiebreaker as well. That should be a great game. But yeah, still looking back at last week, the second game, we had the Riders at the Stamps, and the Riders were favored by 2.5, and they mopped up the Stamps, and that's why I'm thinking Dickinson's pissed, and I think he went in that locker room afterwards and says, "All right, well, if you guys have any plans to go home this week, we're staying here."
Man, Calgary. They looked pretty good at the start. Didn't they beat BC in their first game, to open the season? Or
no, Toronto beat BC in week 1.
But they did beat BC early in the year.
I can't remember. But maybe when they were in. No, I can't. I can't remember. And going into Saturday, we had Montreal favored by 2.5 at Ottawa on a noon kickoff, and I messed up that one as well.
Yeah, you had a lot of faith in Ottawa at home, and I was pretty certain Montreal was going to go in there and spank them and send a message, and they did. Montreal, they were pretty dominating. 24-12 doesn't tell the whole story of that game.
Anyhow,
I went 3-1. I'm 34-29. You went 2-2, so you're 28-34. There's 20 games left, Jess. Are you going to finish 48-34 on the season?
well, I hope. We'll see.
Predictions?
Predictions? Well, if I got to go 15-5, I'd be extremely happy.
That'd be great. A 75% record to finish up the season.
I want to get back to 500 and even money on this season.
Yeah, that's important for sure. I mean, if I finish the next 20, 10-10, I'm still up for the season, and I'm pretty happy about that. Like, I'm 5 games clear of 500 right now. That's great.
Yeah, no, that's great. Good for you, man.
Before we jump into week 17, let's chat about the BC Lions, who I know are near and dear to your heart, as you got a jersey over your right shoulder there.
And the 94 Grey Cup pennant.
Oh, nice. 94, that was a big year for them.
It was. We won the Grey Cup against Baltimore.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
We didn't mention that. I was sitting in the end zone, first row in the end zone, where Louis kicked a winning field goal. It was right there. Wow.
And back then, did the stadium chant like Lou?
Yeah. I remember going, like I was in high school when we were going to games lots in the mid-90s. I remember one of our buddies who didn't know anything about the Lions or football that just came with us. Louis lining up for a field goal, and everyone's going, Lou. And my buddy goes, well, why the hell are they booing Louis? I thought everyone liked him. No, dipshit. They're saying Lou.
Before we talk about week 17 and the Lions, who are coming back from a bye, they finished this season with a bye week. I mean, let's say they win the West, right? Like, it's not inconceivable. They win the West, they get a bye. That means they would have 2 full weeks off. That sounds like going in cold and rusty and maybe a little comfortable.
I don't like it. I don't like that at all.
I don't like that at all either. I mean, on the flip side, though, I don't know if I like it anymore where they don't win the West and they got to go to Princess Auto in the cold before heading back to the Dome for the Grey Cup. That doesn't sound great either.
No, it doesn't. That's bad luck on the schedule to have the bye week in your very last week. You know, unless someone was really, important, was injured and they needed 2 weeks. I don't know. There's been a lot of upsets over the years where the second or whoever comes out of the Eastern or Western semifinal goes in and smokes the first place team in the respective divisional finals. And it's attributed because the guys were off for a week, an extra week, and the team that just came out of the semifinals is flying. They're pumped up, and they're like, man, one more win, and we're at the Grey Cup. And that momentum, it helps them start games anyhow.
2 weeks off is an eternity in the CFL. But you look at these last 4 games that BC has, they're going Hamilton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, Montreal. 10-8 sounds pretty likely for their win total at the end of this year.
Well, they're going to beat Hamilton. They're going to beat Saskatchewan. Montreal's up in the air. And who's the last game?
Second game in that 4-week stretch is Calgary.
Okay, they're going to win that too. The last 4 games are going to go 3-1.
The way you hype up Dave Dickinson, yeah, they probably are going to win that one. And that's not what we want to see at BC Lions' final 4 games. They got to go 4-0 if they want a hope of winning that West. But then, great, you won it. You get to play the Western final in the Dome. That's comfortable. But you got 2 weeks of sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
Well, if I was Mr. Doman, I would take that because he's going to get the whole windfall of that Western final, plus all the money from the Grey Cup. I'm sure he wants the Lions to go to the Grey Cup, but at the end of the day, his pocketbook's going to be expanded if they host that playoff game. And I hope they'll finish at least second, I think.
I don't think the Rough Riders or Edmonton's going to leapfrog them into second. That doesn't seem likely. I'm really surprised that Winnipeg is in first.
I know. I told you weeks ago when I think Winnipeg started 0-4, I was confident in O'Shea getting his group together, and he has. Look at him now. He's in first place.
Yeah, and I don't pretend to know more about the CFL than you, Jess. You're definitely the expert, so good call there.
Yeah, well, thanks, John. People will just say, look at the scoreboard. And you're winning the scoreboard.
But I'm getting free points, right? Like, my record of 34-29, it's there because I'm taking bags of points on a lot of these Tabbies games. I don't think it's my CFL knowledge. I think it's just me understanding numbers and looking at them and going, stats would suggest I should take the points and cross my fingers.
Yeah, and when you take a dog and then they win, I mean, that's pretty comfortable right there.
Week 17. kind of gave a hint who you think is going to come out ahead here. I'll let you cover the spread on this one, but we got Edmonton, and they're going to use their hoofs to stir up some dust out there in Princess Auto facing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What do you think?
I've never heard that. Good comment on the hoof thing. Winnipeg is favored by 4.5 points. They're going to cover that 4.5 easily. So yeah, I'm taking Winnipeg.
Jarius is going to put McLeod back in there, who seem to kind of be rolling. 4.5 points. That's enough for me. I'll go Elks.
Good for you. Yeah. And you got Bethel Thompson starting the quarterback. Even better for me.
Sometimes those elimination games are the hardest ones to win, right? Like Winnipeg doesn't have as much on the line here as the Elks do. They want to keep some distance on the BC Lions, but they're a game ahead. If they lose this one, they're still pretty comfortable. And I think the Elks, they see it and they're going to try and reach out and grasp it. They could still lose this game and I could win with the 4.5 points.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm happy with that pick.
Okay.
The next game is the
good old-fashioned catfight.
So Hamilton, they're getting 6.5 points in this game as well. I mean, like obviously you're going to go Lions because you love the Lions, but is 6.5 enough to still take your money and put it on the Lions?
Sure. Lions, speaking of announcing starting quarterbacks, they announced, Campbell announced he's starting Nathan Rourke. That eliminates any controversy. Vernon Adams must be the greatest teammate in professional sports history. Like he was almost like on the road to win the most outstanding player at the start of the season, and now he's holding a clipboard. But he seems fine with it, so good for him. Can you imagine if Rourke actually goes down, and then we got maybe the second best quarterback in the league to come in? So yeah, I'm taking those Lions to cover that 6.5. That's just a touchdown. They'll win by a touchdown.
But I don't know who's going to do their short yardage plays for the BC Lions because you're not going to risk Vernon Adams on 1 or 2 yard pushes.
I'm guessing you're taking those freaking tabbies, hey?
The tabbies look really hot right now, and I fully expect the tabbies to finish third in the East, which is going to be remarkable.
Yeah, you think they're going to beat Toronto? That's interesting.
I think they're going to beat Toronto. Let's say they went 4-0 and Toronto went 3-1. Yeah, they don't get in on the East, but they might have enough to cross over into the West. And it all starts last week, and they won that game. There's momentum here, and I'm going with the Tabbies this week too.
You got to get yourself a gold and black T-shirt or something.
It's funny. I love feline teams, but you look at the NFL and the Jaguars, the Panthers, and who's the other kitty cat team? Oh, the Bengals.
And the Lions.
Yeah, I actually forgot about the Lions. I thought there was one more, and yeah, thanks for reminding me about those Lions. Anyways, go Cat teams. Game 3, Red Blacks heading into Saskatchewan, coming off a loss. Brown is out. I think Brown is injured, so they're starting Mazzoli. Mispronounced that one. What do you got for a spread on this?
Saskatchewan at home was favored by 3.5 points. I thought the odds makers made a mistake. They're like, they're going to give Ottawa 3.5 points. I'm taking the Eastern Riders to beat the Green Riders easily by 3.5 points.
What gives you that confidence?
Well, just how good Ottawa is. Like they're challenging for first in a very solid East Division, whereas Saskatchewan's just lingering around third and fourth place in a loose West. Sure, it's going to be a good crowd there in Saskatchewan, but Ottawa will be prepared. I think Ottawa's the better team. Like I said, I'm shocked they are getting free points going in there.
I think Ottawa's treading water in the Eastern Conference. They're 5 points back on Montreal. They're only 3 points ahead of Toronto. With 4 games left, there's just not enough points up for grabs for them to move up or down the standings. They'd have to move all the way to 4th if my Tabbies, do what I hope they do. I don't see that happening either. 3.5 points at home in Saskatchewan. So I'll go Green Riders. I think they're going to cover 3.5. I don't have a lot of confidence in the backup quarterback, and we'll see if the Green Riders beat those further east Rough Riders.
All right. And then
final game. Almost straight up pick the winner here. I think there's only 1.5 points going back and forth. Montreal heads into Toronto. Toronto, who we can't figure out if they're good or bad. Or Montreal is pretty clear. They're an awesome team, and they're playing really well, and they've got momentum behind them. What's your guess on this one?
I agree with everything you said there. Toronto's all over the place, and like I said earlier, they're really pissing me off. And Montreal looks like they're the probably the best, but they have the best record in the league. Only 1.5 points. They're in Toronto, but it's a Saturday night game. It starts at 7 p.m. And that crowd at BMO is going to suck. I like Montreal to absolutely destroy Toronto.
1.5. I'm going to go Montreal as well.
Sweet. So we differed on the first three. Is that correct? And then agreed on the Montreal-Toronto game.
Yeah, it looks like it. Elks Tappy, Saskatchewan for me. Montreal to finish it up.
Should be a great week in the CFL.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. It's crazy to think that it's 17 weeks. Like when we started this podcast back just a little while ago, it's gone quick. And I think the end is going to come even quicker. And I don't know what we're going to do for season 2 if there is one. Like my dream was to start a podcast with you because you love the CFL and you know way more than I do. And I wanted to get more into the CFL. This week and these storylines are developing with BC and their potential by really affecting them into the playoffs, and Hamilton maybe clawing their way into the playoffs. Yeah, it makes me want to do a second season with you, Jess.
Yeah, I'd be up for that for sure. How about Edmonton coming out of freaking nowhere that might claw themselves into third spot in the West? They just got to get past Saskatchewan and Calgary, which doesn't sound too hard.
Now, is that because 66% of the teams get into the playoffs, like 6 of 9, and that's why you can have these really rough starts and all of a sudden either finish top of the West like Winnipeg or claw your way into a third place spot like Edmonton?
Well, yeah, the key is being really hot going into the playoffs. When BC won the Grey Cup, I believe in the year 2000, their record on the season was 8-10. But they had ripped off like 6 out of the last 7 games to finish the regular season. And then they won the Western Final on the road, and they went, semifinal on the road, Western Final on the road, and then won the Grey Cup. But they got hot just at the very right time.
But if it's all about getting hot, we got Hamilton, who's hot, and we got Edmonton, who's hot.
Imagine if those two losers come out and meet in the Grey Cup.
Oh my gosh. Would you still use your ticket to go?
You like leaving them on your car windshield in East Vancouver. Someone would steal your car and leave the tickets on the curb.
Have you ever gone to a Grey Cup where you're just like, not interested in these teams, but I bought the tickets and I like the event more than I like the teams?
Yeah, maybe for 1 or 2 Grey Cups in Vancouver. All the visiting Grey Cups I've gone to across the country, even if it was a non-awesome game, it was still just awesome to be. And every other city that I've been to for Grey Cup has done a better job than BC has ever done. There was just a great festivals, parades, and people in the cities buy into it. But with the exception of Toronto, that in 2007 that I went to, they had all their stuff down at the convention center by Sky Dome. But if you walk 2 blocks away from the convention center, no one even knew the freaking Grey Cup was taking place. However, I was just saying how Vancouver's done a bad job with our festivals in the past. That is going to change this November. Mr. Doman's going absolutely crazy. He's going to have a week-long festival. It's going to start right after the Western Final and end at Grey Cup. 7 days in a row in Vancouver. They've got both sides of the convention center, the east and west side. I think the west side's going to have all your team parties and so forth, and the east side's going to have a bunch of family events and introduction to the CFL for kids. They're going to have a zip line going across False Creek. He said he wants this to be the biggest and greatest Grey Cup festival of all time, and he's well on his way to doing it. They have sold approximately 48,000 tickets so far. This new stadium and their seating seats just under 55, so call it 54 something. So that's about 6,000 tickets that are left over. I credit Mr. Dobin for like 90% of that. Pretty much saved the franchise, and now he's built it up.
Well, it's going to be 48,002 tickets pretty soon because I want to pick up a couple. And I'm working on some stuff in the background, Jess, and we'll see. Maybe this podcast will do a live on location at that CFL festival for Grey Cup.
And maybe we'll get to interview Mr. Doman. Let's just shoot for the top.
it would be pretty incredible for this little podcast to have that journey in its first year. And if you have any tips and you want to send them our way, you can write the show at placedon the55pod@gmail.com. Jess, week 16 reinvigorated me. We'll see what week 17 does. Talk to you later.
You got it.